The path of the Omnici has left humanity dithering in the darkness, incapable of advancing on the paths of knowledge. Embracing the warp reveals technology that the primitives on Mars could never dream of wielding. To the wider Imperium, they are identified as the Dark Mechanicum, a designation of heresy and exile. Yet, within their own fractured doctrine, they claim the titles of the New Mechanicum or the True Mechanicum. They are a sect of apostate tech priests, princeps of the Collegia Titanica, and scions of Chaos Knights, remnants of the ancient Mechanicum who have devolved into heretics in service to chaos. Their damnation was sealed as the Great Crusade neared its zenith. In the early years of the 31st millennium, amidst the eruption of the galactic cataclysm known as the Horus Heresy, these factions willingly pledged their loyalty to the War Master Horus and the Chaos Gods. Following the heresy's conclusion, a Pyrrhic victory for the Imperium, the traitorous forces of chaos were purged from the galaxy's heart during the brutal campaigns of the Great Scouring, driven relentlessly towards the Eye of Terror. The renegade tech priests were similarly expelled from Mars by resurgent loyalists of the newly formed Adeptus Mechanicus. These renegades fled into the galactic void, with many seeking refuge within the Eye itself. Over the centuries, their numbers have been bolstered by heretics of the later Mechanicus, those who chose to abandon the Imperium for the path of forbidden tech heresy. In this exile, the Dark Mechanicum became irrevocably enthralled by the power of the warp and its corrupting technologies. The seeds of this schism were sown at the twilight of the Age of Strife in the 30th millennium. The Emperor of mankind, determined to realize his grand design for human unity, moved to secure a galaxy that had become hostile and fractured. He knew the time for unification was at hand, as the birth of the Chaos God Slanesh did not see a conqueror, but a kindred spirit, a man of supreme science who valued the sanctity of the machine. As reports of this golden warrior's technological divinity spread from the summit of Olympus Mons, many within the priesthood began to equate the emperor with the physical manifestation of their own deity within the universe, the Omnissiah. In 739.M30, the Treaty of Mars was ratified, forging an alliance between two distinct empires and establishing the bedrock of the Imperium of Man. In exchange for the vast material required to fuel his armies and the mobilization of the Ring of Iron's orbital shipyards, the Emperor granted the Mechanicum a unique exemption. Despite the strict atheism of the imperial truth promulgated across the galaxy, the sovereignty of the Forge Worlds and the sanctity of the cult Mechanicus were preserved. To the Martian collective, the Omnissiah had become a tangible reality, a golden figure who had walked the surface of the Red Planet. Yet, beneath this veneration, a virulent strain of dissent took root. A minority of tech priests rejected the emperor's divinity, perceiving him not as a god, but as a deceiver who had ensnared the priesthood through falsehoods. For 2 Terran centuries, this resentment festered in the dark, a dormant code waiting to execute a catastrophic rebellion. This faction maintained that the emperor's guise as the Omnissiah was a calculated manipulation, a conqueror's ruse. They viewed the peace offered to the Mechanicum as illusory, a diplomatic veneer concealing a brutal ultimatum, submission or seizure. In their analysis, the tech priests had been coerced into bargaining away their independence, reducing Mars, Terra's ancient rival from the age of technology, to the status of a mere vassal state. 2 centuries after the treaty signing, Kelbor-Hal ascended to the apex of the Martian hierarchy, claiming the title of Fabricator General and Master of Olympus Mons. Retrospective analysis identifies his rise as one of the seminal tragedies of imperial history. It remains a grim paradox that an intellect of such magnitude, capable of unearthing lost technologies and overseeing unprecedented production quotas, would ultimately architect the Mechanicum's descent into heresy. By the time of his rebellion, however, Kelbor-Hal was beyond the reach of human emotion. The organic capacity for pride had long since atrophied, replaced by the cold efficiency of synthetic synapses and the binary logic of a machine. In the months preceding the open declaration of the heresy, the atmosphere of Mars was saturated with treason. The unity of the Mechanicum had fractured into a web of espionage and internecine violence, pitting rival magi and their forge cities against one another. Intelligence reports from the era suggest that even the god machines of the Collegia Titanica, the ultimate military sanction of the priesthood, had secretly aligned their targeting subroutines in anticipation of civil war. Into this volatile lattice stepped Regulus, an emissary of the War Master Horus. His objective was absolute: to secure the industrial allegiance of Kelbor-Hal for the coming rebellion. The Fabricator General viewed the overture with calculated skepticism. He retained the bitterness of his submission to the Emperor 2 centuries prior. To Kelbor-Hal, the master of mankind was little more than a Terran techno-barbarian warlord whose promises of co-equal rule had evaporated, leaving Mars to function as a mere manufactorum for the Imperium's wars. While he acknowledged Horus Lupercal as a visionary, Kelbor-Hal required data, not platitudes. Regulus presented a new geopolitical reality. With the Ulanor Crusade concluded and the Emperor absent from the front lines, power had shifted. He assured the Fabricator General that Horus was a true patron of the Mechanicum. The War Master's terms were clear. In exchange for total industrial priority and the purging of loyalist elements within the Sol system, Horus would guarantee the sovereignty of the Red Planet. The Fabricator General countered, citing the clandestine logistical support already provided to the War Master's favored expeditionary fleets. Yet he refused to exchange one tyrant for another. To break the deadlock, Regulus offered a prize of incalculable worth: the restoration of Martian Empire and a trove of recovered STC data looted from the ruins of the Auretian technocracy by the sons of Horus. While the STC data was calculated as valuable, Kelbor-Hal's ambition required a higher offering. Regulus, anticipating this hunger, delivered the War Master's final damning promise: the total abolition of the Emperor's edicts against forbidden research, specifically regarding abominable intelligence. As the ultimate seal of this dark pact, Horus provided the decryption protocols for the vaults of Moravec, unlocking a repository of warp-tainted knowledge that the Emperor had sealed away, ensuring the Mechanicum's descent into irrevocable damnation. The vaults of Moravec stood as a monument to interdicted science. Sealed by the Emperor's decree following the Treaty of Mars, these archives contained technologies deemed too catastrophic for human comprehension. Artifacts fused with the malign energies of chaos, warp-based weaponry, and the prescribed artificial general intelligences of the Men of Iron. Driven by binary avarice, the Fabricator General accepted the dark bargain. In unsealing these vaults, Kelbor-Hal did not merely acquire weapons, he irrevocably committed the industrial might of mankind to the traitorous cause. The breach released a torrent of esoteric corruption, a digital contagion known as Scrapcode, a chaotic virus of demonic logic coursed through the forged cities and temples of the machine god. This mimetic plague infested the Logistacks and Cogitator archives of the Mechanicum, transforming networked systems into conduits for the primordial anarchy of the warp. While the digital assault ravaged the noosphere, the physical war required a formal casus belli. Kelbor-Hal and his cabal of renegade tech priests, later designated the Dark Mechanicum, utilized the confusion to execute covert protocols of sabotage and assassination against their rivals. Yet they required a pretext to mobilize openly against the Emperor. The catalyst arrived through the theological deviation of Coriel Zeth, mistress of Magma City, who committed the ultimate blasphemy by denying the existence of the Omnicia. Seizing upon this apostasy, the Dark Mechanicum branded the Loyalists as heretics. This declaration ignited the Schism of Mars, plunging the Red Planet into a civil war of apocalyptic scale that mirrored the wider conflict between Loyalist and traitor forces. To facilitate the Warmaster Horus's galactic conquest, Kelbor-Hal orchestrated a project of absolute secrecy within the Sol system. In the orbital shipyards of Thule, hidden within the shadow of Jupiter, the Mechanicum constructed the Furious Abyss. This vessel was a void leviathan without peer, the largest and most heavily armored battleship ever forged by human hands, capable of withstanding planetary-grade lance strikes. The authorization for such a vessel was rooted in the Fabricator General's core logic. The Emperor had shackled the Mechanicum's pursuit of the machine god, placing rigid boundaries on technological evolution. Conversely, Horus offered the removal of all restrictions, promising access to the infinite, albeit corrupting, data of the warp. Faced with the choice between the Emperor's restraint and the Warmaster's offer of unrestricted knowledge, the calculation of Kelbor-Hal's allegiance required mere nanoseconds to process.
Furious Abyss was designated to serve as the flagship of the Word-Bearer's Legion, yet its operational existence was shrouded in absolute secrecy. This vessel was not merely a tool of war, but a mechanism for a specific strategic outcome: the total annihilation of the Ultramarines Legion. Its trajectory was plotted for the eastern fringes, targeting the realm of Ultramar and the Loyalists' homeworld of Macragge. To preserve the secrecy of this first strike, Kelbor-Hal enacted a protocol of total sanitization. Upon the vessel's completion, the Fabricator General ordered the destruction of the Jovian shipyards at Thule. There was no evacuation. Every tech priest, servitor, and menial laborer stationed on the asteroid was incinerated. The silence regarding the massive void ship was purchased with the ash of its creators. While the loss of Thule's infrastructure represented a significant degradation of Martian assets, the cost was deemed acceptable to ensure the Warmaster's trap at Calth would spring without warning. The insurrection was not limited to the human elements of the traitors. The Schism fractured the very spine of the Mechanicum. Under the banner of the Dark Mechanicum, Kelbor-Hal unified the most destructive and esoteric branches of the priesthood. These forces included the Siege Masters of the Ordo Reductor, the Automata Shepherds of the Legio Cybernetica, and the fanatical Myrmidon Destructor cults, factions that had long operated on the periphery of tech heresy. The sheer scale of the betrayal was catastrophic. More than half of the Adeptus Titanicus legios and dozens of allied nighthouses renounced their oaths to Terra. Mars itself fell into the grip of the traitors, while key forge worlds, including Serum, Voss, Cyclothraith, and Styges 8, pledged their industrial output to the Warmaster. Others, such as Incaladion and Ryza, were neutralized by internal civil war. The Warmaster secured the allegiance of these renegade forge worlds through a strategy of transactional heresy. Playing upon their distrust of Mars and the Emperor, Horus offered the ruling synods autonomy and the promise of empire. Under the new Imperium, these worlds were promised not merely survival, but dominance, a stark contrast to the Emperor's regime, which had utilized their resources while restricting their knowledge. The pact was simple: the removal of all technological inhibitions. The Emperor's edicts, safeguards designed to prevent a recurrence of the horrors of Old Night, were declared void. In exchange for the unrestricted flow of weapons to the traitor cause, the machine cult dogma was dismantled, allowing for boundless experimentation. While the finalization of these treaties was complex, the intent was clear. Even as the lords of these renegade worlds negotiated with the emissaries of Malkadar the Sigilate, the regent of Terra, they were already drafting the blueprints for their betrayal, playing both sides of the galactic conflict until the moment of final commitment. The complicity of the Dark Mechanicum in the initial stages of the insurrection was absolute. Their support for Horus was not merely logistical, but active and devastating. During the atrocity at Istvan V, they deployed forbidden technologies and esoteric weaponry, effectively facilitating the annihilation of the loyalist Space Marine legions. Following this baptism of fire, Kelbor-Hal formally ignited the Schism of Mars, a catastrophic civil war intended to sever the Red Planet from the Imperium of Man and restore the sovereign autonomy of the Mechanicum. This secessionist gambit ultimately collapsed following the death of the War Master at the Siege of Terra. In the subsequent vacuum of power, loyalist elements reclaimed the Martian surface, driving their chaos-corrupted brethren into the void. During the brutal campaigns of the Great Scouring, the remnants of the Dark Mechanicum joined the general exodus of the traitor forces, fleeing the resurgent Imperium to seek asylum within the reality-bending sanctuary of the Eye of Terror. In the present era, the Dark Magi and Tech Priests of the Dark Mechanicum, branded as heretics by the Imperial Orthodoxy, have pledged their eternal souls to the Dark Gods. Within the Eye, they function as the indispensable industrial spine of the Long War, maintaining the war gear of the Traitor Legions, the Traitor Titan Legions, and the myriad other forces of chaos with a fervor that rivals the fanaticism of Mars. Their methodology is defined by the pursuit of unrestricted data. They excavate the abyssal depths of secret knowledge withheld by the ruinous powers, operating under the conviction that their loyalist counterparts in the Adeptus Mechanicus are intellectually shackled. To the Dark Mechanicum, the loyalists are fools, blinded by dogma and incapable of comprehending the true divinity of knowledge that can only be accessed through the warp. The schism is total. The tech adepts of the Dark Mechanicum reject the divinity of the Emperor of Mankind, viewing him as a false prophet who enslaved the Martian priesthood. In their theology, the true Omnisaw is the avatar of chaos undivided. Consequently, their existence is dedicated to the dismantling of the God Emperor's realm. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, these entities represent the ultimate tech heresy, a blasphemous fusion of the sacred machine with the profane warp. Yet, archival analysis suggests a disturbing undercurrent. Despite their horror, the Loyalists harbor a dangerous, suppressed curiosity regarding the forbidden innovations of their dark brethren. The Adeptus Mechanicus reserves its most vitriolic hatred for the renegade brethren who fractured their order during the Horus Heresy. These traitors, who endure as the Dark Mechanicum, are not merely enemies, they are living blasphemies. The Forbidden Histories record that the devastation wrought upon Mars and a dozen other war zones was without parallel, leaving a spiritual scar upon the Omnissiah's priesthood that millennia of prayer and purge have failed to cleanse. In the chaotic aftermath of Horus's fall, the survivors of this schism scattered. While many sought sanctuary with the traitor legions, others vanished into the darkest recesses of the Imperium. There, their hatred festered and their forbidden arts evolved. The pedigree of the galaxy's most abhorrent innovations is undeniably theirs. The psychosonic weapons utilized by the Emperor's children, the industrial-scale genetic atrocities of Fabius Bile, the malign technovirus that births the horrific obliterators, all trace their lineage to the laboratories of the Dark Mechanicum. Deep within the Eye of Terror, hellforges ruled by cyber-demonic overlords operate in perpetual fevered industry, churning out the munitions that arm the forces of chaos and sustain the momentum of the Black Crusades. While the renegades were among the first to be branded heretics and flee into the Eye of Terror to escape the Emperor's justice, the Eye is not their sole refuge. The Imperium claims dominion from galactic rim to rim, yet this is a lie of cartography. Vast swaths of the void, designated as outlands, wilderness space, or the halo stars, remain untouched by the Astronomanican. In these shadows, entire civilizations rise, prosper, and collapse into dust, utterly ignorant of the Imperium that surrounds them. The Calaxus sector serves as a stark example. While it stands as an established bastion of imperial law, it is besieged by the unknown. To its borders lies the Coronus Expanse, a lawless region within the halo stars, accessible only via a volatile warp passage. Beyond this gateway, imperial authority dissolves, replaced by the domains of Xenos and lost human colonies. The Dark Mechanicum infests these fringes like a mold. From the Hazeroth Abyss to the edges of the Drusus Marches and the nomadic void between the Calixis and Ixaniad sectors, the renegades have adapted to the environments they occupy. In these lawless zones, heretics often devolve into insular clans, guarding their forbidden knowledge through strict bloodlines. Their understanding of ancient technology and localized warp space phenomena frequently surpasses that of the Imperial Orthodox, a fact that enrages the machine cult. The Adeptus Mechanicus views these lineages, most notably the infamous Meritech clans, as an existential insult. They exert immense political pressure on imperial authorities to mobilize hunter-killer expeditions as a matter of priority. For the renegade who dares to infiltrate imperial space to ply their trade, existence is precarious. There is no tolerance. Discovery yields no mercy, only the interrogation cells of the Inquisition and the finality of execution.
Silent in the Calexian extent are worlds from which the Omnissiah has withdrawn his blessings. They trail their parents' stars like errant children struck dumb and bloodied. Their ruins are profound, their catacombs endless, their savages sorrowful, for these wards of the Imperium of mankind have paid a great and terrible price for the tech heresy of their forebearers. Beyond the boundaries of the material universe, located within the interstitial nightmare between real space and the warp, exist the demon worlds. Here, the immutable laws of physics and reason are abrogated, replaced by the capricious will of the ruinous powers. These realms serve as sanctuaries for the servants of chaos, shielding them from the Inquisition, whose jurisdiction ends where sanity dissolves. It is within these anomalies that the remnants of the Dark Mechanicum have established their dominion. These are the Hellforge worlds, planets wholly subsumed by infernal industry and the production of demon machines. In these manufactorums, the line between mechanics and metaphysics is erased. Flesh is ground in the mills of industry. Suffering is not merely a byproduct, but a catalyst used to manifest the psychotic visions of their masters. Millions of enslaved souls are consumed within a planetary-scale labyrinth of forges, churning out the infinite armaments required to sustain the traitor legion's long war against the Imperium. The masters of these domains have long since shed the limitations of humanity, becoming hybrid entities of demon flesh and darkened steel. They are beholden to no singular authority, neither mortal warlord nor chaos god. They operate as amoral arms dealers to the great game. They barter their blasphemous innovations to chaos sorcerers, demagogues, and demon princes. The currency of this trade is immutable, raw biological resource. They demand the flesh and souls of slaves to feed the unquenchable hunger of the dark forges. Visual analysis of a hellforge reveals a world suffocated by its own output. A perpetual shroud of toxic smog obliterates the heavens, fed by vertical exhaust stacks that pierce the lower atmospheric decks. The planetary surface is rendered invisible, entombed beneath layers of hyper-industrial sprawl that burn and forge in a ceaseless cycle. There is no day or night, only the ruddy glow of the smelting pits. Amongst this desolation, robed figures move with the terrifying efficiency of the machine, their exposed flesh revealing artful mechadendrites and cybernetic augmentations. The desecration of the Martian faith is absolute. The blessed cog mechanicum is eradicated, replaced by the iconography of the leering skull and the spiked wheel. The architecture itself screams of the ruinous powers, with walls and bulkheads inscribed with glyphs of unholy patronage.
Even the heretics bear these sigils branded into their synapses, their loyalty to the machine god excised. The furnaces do not burn with simple heat. They are fueled with promethium, steel alloys, and the combustion of blood and souls. Structurally, these worlds defy engineering logic. Forge cities erupt from the crust in chaotic, non-Euclidean formations, driven not by urban planning, but by the maddened whims of the Dark Magi. The divergence from the Imperium has left the Dark Mechanicum without a unified theological core. Unlike the rigid orthodoxy of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the heretics possess no central authority. Their ideology is a fractured spectrum of damnation. Some reject the Omnissiah entirely as a falsehood. Others worship him as an aspect of chaos, while many simply discard all theology, embracing a cold, atheistic pursuit of forbidden data. Even amongst the most radical explorators of the Adeptus Mechanicus, there exist theological event horizons, boundaries that must never be breached to preserve the sanctity of the machine god. The heretic is defined by the enthusiastic obliteration of these limits. They traffic in the forbidden, the study of Xenos designs, the excavation of proscribed archaeotech from the dark age of technology, and the weaponization of the warp. To the orthodox cult Mechanicus, the heretic's ultimate crime is not merely the theft of secrets, but the act of innovation, the combining of components in forbidden configurations to birth technologies previously unconceived. This apostasy extends to the democratization of the sacred. The heretic willingly disseminates the mysteries of the machine to the uninitiated, shattering the priesthood's monopoly on knowledge. They do not shun the dangerous or the unknown. They target it. Their research is a deliberate inversion of Martian dogma, with a specific fixation on warp-based engineering. This obsession necessitates a physical metamorphosis. As the heretic forges weapons of mass destruction, they invariably reforge themselves. The organic form is systematically purged, replaced by cybernetics, and often twisted by the mutational gifts of the Chaos Gods. The resulting entity is a hybrid of steel and sorcery, often possessing combat durability and firepower far exceeding that of a loyalist Magos. The following is OO. In the resources should be noted. Imperial strategic assessment often errs by classifying heretics as a unified force, mirroring the Adeptus Mechanicus. This is a fallacy. There is no galaxy-spanning hierarchy of tech heresy. The Dark Mechanicum is not a monolith, but a fractured landscape of independent fiefdoms and dark forge worlds. Each domain is ruled by a fallen Magos, or a cabal of Magi, ruling over their thralls with absolute tyranny. Much like the warbands of the traitor legions, these corrupt tech priests are endemic rivals, warring against one another in a Darwinian struggle for resources and secrets, or existing in isolationist paranoia. The heretic's methodology is one of unbridled escalation. They power their engines with the raw energy of the warp, often binding demonic entities to function as machine spirits. They transgress the ultimate taboos, the research of artificial general intelligence, silica animus, memory transference, and the metaphysical atrocity of trapping sentient souls within mechanical containment. Driven by a pathological obsession with novelty, the heretic values the new over the proven. The recovery of lost data, or the synthesis of a new theory, is viewed as a tactical triumph, regardless of the danger. This hunger is insatiable. Whether sourcing power from the ruinous powers, scavenging xenosterelicts, or raiding imperial strongholds for archival data, the heretic operates under a singular axiom: the advancement of knowledge justifies any sacrifice. Despite their service to chaos, true apotheosis is statistically rare. Few heretics are elevated by the dark gods to the rank of demon prince. The majority face a more ignoble termination.
They are consumed by their own ambitions, ending their existence as mere components within their own infernal inventions, their personality and biology assimilated into the machine, leaving only a husk of the creator behind.
No, Secutor, you may not move. Even now, conduction filaments are piercing your neural systems and unworthy flesh. So they sent you to find me, did they? To carry out the Omnisia's judgment on me? Well, you found me, or more accurately, I found you, foolish puppet of meat and iron. Well, now you will dance on my strings, not theirs. Ah, yes, your last paltry defenses fall. In a way, I envy you. In a moment, you will experience the most exquisite of agonies as I rip apart and overwrite your synapses one by one. It should be quite the experience. Now, Secutor, open wide. Here I am. Cognitive data chain forensically recovered from Secutor Row 456-0, aftermath of the destruction of Forge Control Lathe Het Delta 9. The operational parameters of the Adeptus Mechanicus are defined by a lattice of draconian strictures. These are not merely rules, but an ironclad theological code designed to regulate every microsecond of the priesthood's existence. The objective of this dogma is absolute: the monopolization of knowledge, the suppression of blasphemous innovation, and the maintenance of the cult Mechanicus's stranglehold on the technological infrastructure of the Imperium. To claim the title of heretic savant is to commit an act of intellectual apostasy. It is the rejection of the Archmagos Doctrinal's teachings in favor of individual innovation, experimentation, and free will. In the eyes of the orthodoxy, for a tech priest to embrace this path is a radicalism equal to a confessor of the Adeptus Ministorum renouncing the imperial creed. The punitive protocols for such deviation are absolute. There is no martyrdom of the pyre for the discovered heretic. Instead, they face the clinical horror of deconstruction. Their cybernetic augmentations are forcibly extracted from the living host. The remaining biological matter, the meat, is harvested and recycled into servitor components, paying for the sin of innovation with eternal lobotomized slavery to the machine god. The descent into the renegade state is rarely an induction into a cult, but a consequence of isolation. It is statistically prevalent among explorator cadres and those seconded to the Inquisition, operatives functioning beyond the rigid oversight of the Forge worlds. In the void, necessity often supersedes dogma. Forced adaptation and the absence of support can lead a tech priest to innovate for survival, affirming their own ingenuity over the prayers of the cult. For others, the motivation is darker: a pathological ambition and an obsessive accumulation of power that rails against the stagnation of approved templates. The path of tech heresy is a hazard vector comparable to direct exposure to the warp. The study of alien artifacts and the proscribed technologies of humanity's ancient past exerts a corrupting influence on both chassis and soul. To survive, the heretic savant must cultivate a fortress of silence. Discovery equals termination. Consequently, these individuals develop a deep-seated paranoia, distancing themselves from their peers. Their focus shifts entirely to self-preservation and the quest for knowledge. This paranoia manifests physically. They increasingly modify their own bodies with concealed, often heretical weaponry and defensive systems. Ultimately, the heretic savant is an internal threat, a tech priest who remains within the hierarchy, outwardly loyal but inwardly false, They are agents of their own will. Operating within the machine they seek to transcend, eternally vigilant against the judgment they know is coming.
Those fools and their talk of spirits and rights. Technology is cause and consequence, mechanism and effect, and should not be so restrained and mishandled as those red-robed simpletons would believe. Repinesti Corvane, Heretic. Beyond the sanctified borders of the Imperium, within the Empyrean bleed of the Eye of Terror and the uncharted darkness of the Halo stars, operate factions that explicitly reject the dogmatic stagnation of the Adeptus Mechanicus. These individuals seek to deconstruct the miracle of the machine, prioritizing empirical understanding over the ritualized superstition of the cult Mechanicus. Classified as heretics, these operatives are marked for termination. The imperial decree regarding their existence is binary. They are blasphemers to be hunted without mercy. To survive the purge, these pariahs frequently aggregate into cabals for mutual defense and the pooling of illicit data. They find natural allies within the criminal infrastructure of the Void. By embedding themselves within pirate fleets and smuggling syndicates, heretics secure the operational freedom and mobility required to conduct their studies beyond the surveillance of Mars. This symbiosis provides them access to advanced, often proscribed machinery that would otherwise be confiscated or destroyed. In the lawless expanse of the Coronus Expanse, infamy breeds a specific nomenclature. Among the low-born populations stretching from the void port of Footfall to the world of Damaris, a title has emerged for those fallen tech priests of sufficient lethality and skill: the Arch-Heretic. While this classification lacks formal codification within Imperial archives, the threat profile is consistent. An arch-heretic possesses technical acumen on parity with or exceeding that of high-ranking explorators. The most dangerous among them are apostates of the priesthood itself, former worshippers of the Omnici who have severed their connection to the dogma, but retained the lethal proficiency of their order. In the criminal underworld of the Void, their ability to manipulate the machine without the shackles of morality makes them assets of incalculable value. In the final analysis, the Dark Mechanicum represents more than a mere military insurgency. They are the existential shadow of the Adeptus Mechanicus itself. They stand as a terrifying testament to the potential of unchecked innovation fused with the primordial truth of the warp. While the loyal priesthood of Mars stagnates, locking itself within a prison of ritual and prayer to preserve rotting technology, the Dark Mechanicum evolves. They are unbound by morality, sanity, or the limitations of physics. They wait in the darkness of the Eye and the silence of the Halo stars, their demon engines idling. They operate on a single chilling logic. In a galaxy defined by eternal war, the victor is not the one with the strongest faith, but the one who builds the deadliest monster. The Schism of Mars did not end in the 31st millennium. It merely changed battlefields. And in the long, grinding attrition of the 41st millennium, the Dark Mechanicum is patient. They know that flesh withers and empires crumble. But the machine is eternal.